I'll let you know.
Okay. All right. So I think we'll just get started then. I would like to call it is 7:02 p.m. and I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting to order. My name is Becky Israels. I am the Vice Chair of Planning at this time, and today is Monday, August 24. I will do a roll call, please. Eiley?
Here.
Rowe?
Here.
Israel's here. Helmrich?
Here.
DeFranco?
Here.
Shipley?
Here.
Welk. He's coming. We are aware that he will be coming. Just before we do the roll call, or I'm sorry, just before we do the approval of the agenda, we will do a Pledge of Allegiance. Do we normally do a Pledge of Allegiance on a Zoom
Not on
call?
Zoom. Not on Zoom.
No, we don't.
No, there's
Okay.
no flag.
Okay. Well, I wasn't sure, so I
Yeah.
thought I would ask.
No,
Okay.
okay.
Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Prior to doing that, I would like to sincerely thank Andy Preetz for his service on this commission as our commissioner for quite a long time, but he brought a lot of leadership and stability and strength, and I think taught us a lot in his leadership of this. So I do want to thank Andy. And I also would like to thank Chris Lozano for his years of service on the Planning Commission. And it was a pleasure for all of us to work with both of those gentlemen. So I would just like to start with that. Okay. Next, I would also like to welcome two new commissioners. And I don't know if you would like to say something about yourself. Denise Shipley, would you like to, and Daniel DeFranco, if you would like to just introduce yourself briefly, that would be fine.
Daniel, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Daniel DeFranco. I think I know most of you. I've been living in the township for about 4 years now. I'm not originally from the area. I'm originally from New Jersey. Don't hold it against me. But I absolutely love this town. I think it's got an amazing history. It's a place of beauty. The people are fantastic. And I'm very excited to be a part of this commission, which I think handles such, or probably the most important issues of the township. And I take it seriously, and I'm excited to work with all of you and get to know you.
Thank you. Denise?
Yeah, hi, Denise. I've been in the township for 20 years, raised 4 kids. I just sent my last one off to college, so I'm halfway between there and home right now. I'll just let you all figure me out as we go along, as I will figure all of you out. Thank you for having me.
Well, welcome to both of you. The next thing is the approval of the agenda. So is there a motion to conduct this public meeting via video Zoom conference, ratify the procedure for public comment in meeting as described in the notice of public meetings, and approve the agenda as written? I made it easy for you.
I would so move.
Moved by Rowe. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Eiley. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes.
Sorry, Madam Vice Chair, would you like to do the roll call vote for that agenda?
Oh, sure. I have to do a roll call for everything, don't I, on Zoom?
Yeah.
All right. I will do a roll call vote. Eiley?
Yes.
Rowe?
Yes.
Israels? Yes. Helmrich?
Yes.
DeFranco?
Yes.
Welk? And yet Shipley?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is the approval of the minutes. These are the Planning Commission minutes from 6/22/2020 that were included in your packet. We usually go through the minutes page by page And if there's any typing errors or omissions or not just clerical errors, but intent errors, please address that. Okay, page 1. Any additions or corrections, page 1? Page 2,
I have one correction on page 2.
yes.
Under speaker number 9, Nathaniel Reed, towards the bottom, says Nathaniel provided his phone number. We need to add an H.
Okay, thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other corrections on page 2? Page 3? Page 4? Page 5?
I gotta have one. In the second line, several 8 buildings on this property that should be R zoned I1. Maybe it says on his property. I'm sorry, maybe I misread that. Maybe it is correct.
Yeah, I think
It looks correct.
Wait a
to
minute,
me.
no, it is more than one building. I'm sorry. So it
R,
could be
yeah.
R. Yeah,
It's R. You're right, Dave. Okay.
But his property is zoned 1I, which is singular.
Yes.
no, I think you're right.
So it is.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna leave it as is, not as R, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Any other correct? It does read funny. Sorry. Anything else on page 5? Page 6. Okay, page 7. Page 8. And page 9.
I would move that we accept the minutes from the June 22nd, 2020 Planning Commission meeting as amended. I'll second that.
Okay, motion moved by Rowe and seconded by Eiley. I will call for a roll call vote to accept the minutes. Eiley,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Israel's yes, Helmrich,
yes.
DeFranco,
Yes.
Welk, Shipley.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So next on the agenda would be public comments. And I think, Lene, you were going to kind of address this too.
Yeah, I'm
If ever available.
happy to help. Other than commissioners, we have one guest on the line, Lori Goshorn. Lori, you're able to unmute yourself if you would. I'm not sure if you're here just to listen or if you would like to speak during this public comment period that you have 3 minutes.
Nope, I'm just here to observe and keep up to date.
Okay, wonderful.
And I will close public comments at this time. I would like to make one comment, and I think I represent the entire board on this, and especially even to you, Lori, because you're here. It's difficult sometimes to have, it is difficult to have Zoom meetings and sit back and try to manage your paperwork and address the concerns of people who are attending the meeting. And sometimes the intent of people who are attending is not always represented well, possibly in our minutes or possibly even with our communication to you. And I think I speak for all of us when I talk about how difficult it really is to have a Zoom meeting and represent all of you. So we all look very much forward to meeting in person and also meeting with the public in person. But we're all able to represent ourselves to you at any other time too. So please, I just want you to know that we are trying our best to do this, and our intent is there. And I do apologize if it ever comes off that it's not. Okay. So next on the agenda is new business, and that's the election of officers. So Lene, would you like to conduct
Sure.
the new business, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I did include the rules of procedure in your packets. I think this is great information for each commissioner to have on hand. It's a nice refresher. They were written back in 2013, so I know we have some new faces on the Planning Commission, so I thought it would be helpful for you to all have a copy. That said, our rules of procedure really doesn't have a very detailed process when it comes to the election of officers. The rules do have an overview of what those officers do and the officer positions that the Planning Commission includes. Those positions would be the chairperson. Now we do not have a chairperson. That chairperson was not reappointed or did not seek reappointment. The vice chair currently is held by Rebecca Israels. You can read here, but the vice chair essentially fills in when the chairperson is absent. And the chairperson, I should say, is a ex officio member of any committees. We do not have any committees currently, but if we did, they would be a member. The chairperson presides over the meetings. We communicate when we set agendas. And the chairperson also must vote on all the actions of the Planning Commission. So that is the role. And then secretary, that position is currently held by Rebecca, or by you, Becky. Do you do both vice chair and secretary?
Currently I do.
Okay, so the secretary is in charge of our minutes. And they keep all of those minutes and records. We do record each meeting, and the secretary is also responsible for any correspondence or notices related to meetings or official acts of the Planning Commission. So know in that secretary role that you are supported by the township and township staff. We do prepare the agendas, the packets, the public hearing notices. We send those notices to the newspaper and to residents living within 300 feet when the Planning Act requires that we do so. So the big role for the secretary is really the minutes. So that is what we're here to do. I don't even read here that, the term of the officers is 1 year. Okay, so know that this, whatever you decide tonight is a 1 year position. And you're certainly able to offer up a slate, right? I don't think that we need to vote on each role. Individually, there could be a motion to recommend a slate of officers that could be voted on. And I think that you might want to just have some discussion amongst yourselves about each one of those. Maybe a natural slate might percolate during your discussion. And so I'll let you discuss from there.
I would be happy to make a motion if everybody's ready.
I had one.
Sure.
Too. Go ahead.
I would like to move that we nominate Becky Israels as chair, Dave Eiley as vice chair, and Daniel DeFranco as secretary.
I'm happy to support that.
Well, so there's a motion and a support on the table. I'm just sort of filling in a little bit since Becky, your name is on the slate, but let's just start with the secretary role. Daniel, hearing what those responsibilities are, do you feel comfortable with that nomination?
I think if I maybe sat down with Becky and got kind of her take on how she does it, I would be comfortable stepping into that role.
Okay.
Okay, that would be perfect, Daniel. I'd be happy, very happy to do that with you.
Thank you.
I'm also happy, Daniel, to share and encourage you also to look at minutes from other planning commissions. I work in some other communities, and certainly minutes are publicly available. So you can add your own finesse to the process and to the product. And then Dave, let's talk to Dave. Dave, how do you feel about being nominated for vice chair? Is that something that you feel comfortable doing?
Yes, I would feel comfortable supporting Becky Israels as vice chair, or supporting her as chair as vice chair. I think she'll be a good example to follow, and I can learn a lot and kind of position myself into maybe at some point in time, moving up to that chair position if it was necessary.
Thank you, Dave. And then Becky, how do you feel about that being nominated as chair? Is that a comfortable position for you?
I think I would be very comfortable in that position with Dave as my vice chair and your support, because I really appreciate the support you have really provided to us and in your leadership. So I would do my best, and if I'm not appreciated in the position, you only have me for 1 year, so we can go on to someone else now. But yeah, thank you for your vote of confidence, Bill and John. And yes, I would totally depend on all of you. So sure.
Great. It sounds like then maybe acting vice chair, if you'd like to call the question.
I will call the question. So we do have a slate of officers recommended, and that would be Chairperson Rebecca Israels, Vice Chair David Eiley, and Secretary Daniel DeFranco. Is there a motion? Oh, there's already been a motion, so I will just call for the roll call vote. Here's my list of names again. Eiley.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Israels. Yes. Can I vote for myself? Helmrich.
Yes.
DeFranco.
Yes.
Welk. And Shipley.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other questions or concerns? Then motion passed.
Congratulations.
All right.
Thank you.
Congrats, everybody.
Moving on to the master plan review and discussing priorities. I know we've had a lot of discussion on this, a little bit back and forth about when we're going to meet and talk about these priorities, or what we actually want to do and how we want to meet. And so I think that, Lene, if you want to take over the conversation about this evening, I think it would be helpful to lay it out and talk about how we want to do this, how we want to address these things and prioritize what we feel should be on the master plan and included. And then I know Dave Eiley, thank you for sending some suggestions in. And I think others may have some that they didn't send in. So I hope we allow time to discuss those too. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, great. I mean, I think that certainly the bulk of this is really giving planning commissioners the opportunity to share. But the reason that we have this item on the agenda is that it's always, I think, recommended in the role of a planning commission is that you're not just reactive meaning you're not only seeing a site plan or a rezoning or a special approval use for immediate development, that your role is also to think ahead and to help be the stewards of the community vision. And that community vision is really embodied in the 5-year, or in this case, it's about a 20-year planning horizon, but the master plan. So that master plan guides future growth and development in the township. One of the key components of the master plan is a future land use map. And you should all have a copy of the plan and the map in the materials that we had printed for you. If you haven't had a chance to pick them up at the township, please do so soon. But what happens is that there's a community-wide process, usually a survey that's done, and a lot of community meetings and discussions to come up with a master plan. And in communities across Michigan, you have to have a master plan if you're gonna then have zoning, because zoning is really the law of the land. It sets forth the rules for how development happens on a property, the types of uses, what that development looks like, where it's placed on the property. Those are all things that zoning dictates. And the zoning map often resembles that future land use map. It tends to have many of the similar colors. It identifies where different uses can be placed in the township. But the master plan is that long-term vision. So often your zoning kind of trails behind the master plan. So you'll see that there might be properties that are designated in your land use plan in that map as one type of use, but zoned a different way. So often as a planning commissioner, you might see a request to rezone a property to be more in line with the master plan. So that's how those two maps work together. The future land use map has land use designations or categories, and then your zoning map has zoning districts. Yeah, I see a few of you getting out those two documents. So as planning commissioners, I know I'm focusing on zoning quite a bit. So you have those districts, the zoning districts, the colors that correspond to different zoning categories that are really related to use and dimensional standards. But there are also regulations in the zoning ordinance that dictate how the look and feel of the property. And the look and feel of the property is very much a product of your parking regulations. It's a product of your landscaping requirements. It would be a product of your sign standards, what your rules are for driveways and curb cuts. Lighting is another big one. So all of those other standards are also contained within the zoning ordinance. And often the master plan has goals and objectives for the community as a whole that can be implemented through zoning actions. So ideally, when you write a master plan, you set up all of these lofty goals and your big vision. And then you work at amending your zoning ordinance to reflect that vision, because zoning is the biggest tool for how the community's goals are reflected on the ground, really, like the day-to-day stuff that you see when you drive through the township. So that's kind of the tie between your master plan and your zoning. And this overview that I worked on back in May, and Ed Welk is joining us now. So hi, Ed. We're on the item related to the master plan. The memo that I worked on has a planning and zoning lens, meaning I went through the goals and the objectives of the tri-community plan and tried to pick out elements where I could see that our zoning ordinance could be the best tool for implementing those goals. So one example might be tree preservation. There is a goal in the master plan. There's some goals related to special environments and open space, related to, let me find it, like just in general, land use and growth management, community character. When you start to read those goals and objectives, one of the things that comes out is that the rural character is something that's really appreciated by our residents. And oftentimes rural character is embodied in things like larger lot sizes, maybe uses like farm entertainment uses like corn mazes and wineries and places like that, or wedding barns often evoke a rural preservation type of feel, but also those tree-lined roads, right, where you have these big canopies of trees. So one thing in our zoning ordinance is that we have a tree preservation ordinance, but I've worked with that ordinance and found that it's not very, it doesn't have a lot of rules. There isn't a lot of teeth to it. You know, so that might be something to look at. Another component of the master plan has a lot to do with growth management. And the idea there is that our growth, where we see new development, maybe that can be an increase in density or just new development in general, would follow where we have community services, where we have water, where we have sanitary sewer, where we have roadways that can accommodate increase in vehicle trips. So, you know, when I look at our zoning ordinance and our land use plan, you know, I see that we could have maybe additional standards that might promote or incentivize growing where we have those services today, versus seeing growth kind of leapfrog out into areas of the township where, say, the land might be cheaper, but not necessarily correspond to our community vision. Another topic would be housing. And I know I've emailed a few times, and back when I started at the township, Bill Rowe asked us to even look at housing. And we've had presentations by Ryan Kilpatrick from Housing Next about how there's a bit of a mismatch between what a community member in Saugatuck Township can afford with.
Barbara, I'm not
It's very frustrating.
complaining to you.
Hi, Ed. What someone can afford versus the cost of a new home today. And the cost of homes are really related to the construction costs and the price of property, really, how marketable or what the market is dictating in terms of property values. So, you know, we have
There I am.
another, hi Ed, another component of affordability when it comes to housing is how
You're on the
big
screen
our
anyway.
houses, hi Ed. I'm just gonna keep you muted, Ed, for now, okay? So with housing, one of the challenges is that our zoning ordinance has a requirement that the minimum size of a house be 1,000 square feet. New construction is about $125, $150 a square foot. So if we have 1,000 square feet that we require, if we're building new, we know that house is going to be at least $150,000, which doesn't take into account the price of the land, the cost of the land. So when you think about what a minimum wage job is, or even, you know, people, teachers, essential workers, what they're making on a per hour basis does not leave a lot left over to cover the cost of a house, a mortgage. So, you know, some of our rules that we have in our ordinance play into how affordable our housing is and how we're able to provide a community where we have a diverse mix of residents, where we have a diverse mix of, or where we're continuing to see, you know, new families and where we're supporting our schools. You know, all of that comes into play with housing and affordability. And then another topic I think I'd like to call out, because I'm kind of partial to it, is the whole idea of mobility and how people move around our community. Because in a family budget, a household budget, the first expense is always housing, but the second expense is transportation. And in a community like the Tri-Communities, we luckily have a bus system, an on-demand bus system. But we also have a burgeoning trail and not quite sidewalk, but we have a new trail system, and we have hopes and dreams for how that trail system might connect. But one thing that I've identified is that while we have the Blue Star Highway Trail, we don't really have safe connections to that trail from other parts of the township. So something I see whenever I drive to the community is our new Bigby, right? And Spectators, we have the new marijuana retail business going in next to Spectators and the gas station. But there aren't safe ways for people to cross Blue Star Highway over to that trail. We also have a lot of residential development on the south side of Blue Star Highway that have a difficult time accessing the trail. I know we've done a good job with some of the sidewalk connections near the cemetery that we've completed so that people can access the trail from the city of Saugatuck. But something we might want to look at as a planning commission would be requirements for sidewalks or for non-motorized pathways as new development comes in. So that would be a way to help with the economics of a household by at least providing more and viable, safe choices for getting from point A to point B in the community. I guess those are just some of the highlights for me, but there are certainly others. And I think the goal for this discussion was just to give this planning commission a little bit more time to digest the master plan, because it is a hefty document, and give you a little bit more time to review the memo. And I think our goal would be for the planning commission to consider what some of the next steps might be for you as a planning commission and for the township as we think more long-term about how we might implement the master plan. And we know that it's not all going to happen tomorrow or next month, that these conversations take time. We recommended a couple of next steps that the township board has been weighing in on as well, but I did give you kind of an overview of some of these next steps. I know that we've talked about housing being maybe top of mind for the next couple of months and doing a full audit of our zoning ordinance and how it is either supporting the idea of attainable and attainable housing, or whether or how we can amend our zoning ordinance to accommodate more diverse housing types and a better mix of housing. So those are some of those short-term next step items that are included in the memo. But I know that John provided an overview at the last meeting, which also included the housing focus. Dave, you shared with us some of your priorities as well. So I think it would be nice if we could just settle on a couple of things that we can keep in the back of our minds as we have any agendas every month where we could devote a little bit of time to just long-term planning conversations. I know that was a little bit all over the place. I am in my 3rd floor and it's really hot up here. It's really hot.
Okay.
I live in a 1910 house without any air conditioning.
Okay, thank you, Lene. And I think it's important to mention that we are talking or hoping to have a joint meeting with the board to discuss our priorities once we establish some. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
And I want the Planning Commission to know I'm excited that I am going to be just having a walking meeting with the zoning administrator / planner from the city of the Village of Douglas and also the city of Saugatuck on September 1st. The 3 of us are getting together. So we've never done that. And I think that that'll be a nice sort of kickoff to some of this kind of collaborative conversation that we want to have in our communities.
And could you restate that date, September 1st?
September 1st, yeah.
Good.
September 1st, I think it's the Tuesday. September 1st at 11 a.m. We're meeting at the Saugatuck City Hall. And I just said we can walk and talk, weather permitting. So we'll have our masks on and we'll just take a walk and talk about, you know, different things that have been impacting the community.
Can I ask a question, please, about getting together with somebody in that respect and talking about planning for the community? What are the rules? Just can you, sorry if I just, what are the rules? Is there something about off the record, like without it being public? Can 2 people, 3 people, is there a set number?
Yeah, that's a good question and a good reminder. So first off, we never want to have more than a quorum. So we always want to stay with fewer than 3 people, 3 or fewer planning commissioners. We also encourage that there not be any ex parte communication, meaning if we have a specific request on the agenda, we really don't want to have any sidebar conversations with members of the
Okay.
members of the Planning Commission. You can listen to them. I mean, maybe something's happening in your neighborhood. You can listen. I wouldn't weigh in. I wouldn't ever make it seem like you are deliberating in the public. The place for deliberation is here at this Planning Commission. People also ask about conflict of interest. And, you know, certainly we can get our attorney to weigh in on that. But when I think about conflict of interest, it's often if there's a family connection, like a close family connection or a financial connection. So often, Bill Rowe, you've recused yourself on items where your firm or yourself, you might be representing the applicant, and that would be an instance where there's a financial connection. And so you would want to recuse yourself. And if you do that, sometimes you might even step away from the table. You might even go and sit in the audience if you really want to make sure that there's a clear delineation between you as a planning commissioner weighing in on something or influencing something just by being at the table versus stepping away from that item and being in the audience.
But I happen to live down the street from where you were saying, Big B, and that.
Oh,
Right. So I often try to cross the street. So that is very personal to me. I would ask for a traffic study in that area. That is my personal neighborhood, so I'm not sure, is that something that I should be weighing in on?
Oh, yes. I mean, this is just a brainstorming session, so we don't have any,
'Cause I can tell you
we're not
first,
making right now any kind of decision. We don't have any application in front of us. It's more just, what's on your top of mind in terms of use and community priorities?
Okay, the chair recognizes Bill Rowe.
Hi, this is a little off the current topic, but it just kind of made me think about this. For our two new members, you do have the availability of going through the Michigan Citizen Planner program.
I'm currently just finishing that up.
Okay, fantastic. And Daniel, if you have not done that yet, I would strongly recommend that you go through that process too. It'll really help to explain a lot of these things.
Yeah, I'm planning to look into it because I was talking to Denise briefly about it, and it sounds like a great thing to do, just in preparation for everything to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And the township provides that, correct, Lene? I mean, the township would pay for that, right?
My understanding.
We do, that is my understanding. We do have funding budgeted for training. John, I know you've done some research in terms of materials too, print materials that we'd like to purchase and then make available.
Right, I was going to share that later today, but just so all the commissioners are aware, the budget in this fiscal year that just began July 1st, the Planning Commission has $1,500 that can be used for training and or publications. I had shared a few weeks ago a list of publications from the Michigan Association of Planners with Lene and Rebecca. And our intention there is to pick some of these. We don't necessarily need individual copies for new or existing members, but there's things we could share and rotate. So we hope to order those soon because we are a member of the Michigan Association of Planners, so we get a discounted rate on some of these really good guides. And
So I kind of jumped the gun and I did that all on my own. I've already paid for all of that. So
okay.
Daniel, you may want to get them because it was about $250.
Okay.
Oh, we can save Daniel some money possibly.
So yeah, you might want to get on that because I already spent that. And I also joined the Michigan planning, and I have some information that I can pass on, so you might not need to. I can give you my information.
That would be fantastic.
Okay. So going back to the master plan 5-year review, John, would you like to go through some of the priorities that you had listed?
I didn't ask you.
Yes, and first I want to just, I mean, I think both of these things we've discussed in the past few months, but just to remind everyone, the current master plan that we all received recently to review and or re-review, that was adopted by all three communities in 2016, which means in 5 years, next year, 2021, it's up for re-review by all three communities. And related to that, the Michigan Association of Planners recommends that once a year, the Township Board and the Planning Commission have a joint meeting to visit the master plan and discuss potential goals and maybe some changes of view. And I'm not sure that's ever happened before. We started talking about this just as the pandemic hit. I want to share, I mean, the Township Board feels pretty strongly at this point that that kind of meeting might be better done when we can meet in person. And I've discussed that with some of you, and I think that's sort of a feeling too, especially if we're inviting the public.
Yes.
I did want to point out that the executive order from the governor that allows us to do Zoom meetings, it is possible to hold meetings such as this, or even the board meeting outdoors. And I know some municipalities are doing that. So I just throw that out there in case we don't want to wait 6 more months. But it is something that the board discusses every month, and I would love feedback from each of you on that as well. We do need to do this joint meeting, especially since the plan itself is up for total review in 2021. And then to your point, Becky, yeah, Yeah, you all have the memo that I wrote, I guess back in May or June after Lene put together this fabulous overview of the master plan, which was so helpful to me and my colleagues, and I think to all of you. And I'm not going to go read through it, but there's a couple I wanted to just call out or underscore because I think they link to some of the things Lene said. I would really like to see us put some teeth into our tree ordinances and discuss that in more detail moving forward. I'm all in. I think we're all in on the housing and residential issues and perhaps allowing smaller home footprints, more homes per lot. I think that's going to be a major focus of this commission in the next month or two. On the economic development side, I would like to see us investigate more and study to encourage, solar panel farms and other renewable energy businesses. We have a lot of land here, and I think we could be a real leader. And this one, don't laugh, but on the agricultural front, it's bothered me since I moved here in 2004 that here we are in an agricultural community. We've got farms everywhere. I live on a street that's zoned residential, and it doesn't allow anyone on my street to have some chickens. And I've got neighbors who I won't name who have had chickens for years, but they're violating the ordinance. It says no livestock. And I think that's kind of ludicrous when we have cities like Grand Rapids and Ann Arbor allowing up to 3 hens at a home if they're properly maintained in a pen. So it's
John,
not.
I have a note that says I agree with you on the farm animal review. So
Thank you. Like I said, it's not the most urgent thing, but it's bothered me all these years before I got involved in local government. So I wanted to bring that to all your attentions.
I would agree with you.
Thank you.
Is that it, John?
Yeah, like I said, you've got the bullet points. I mean, I think we want to let Dave speak to his memo. And I want to encourage everyone else to do, a similar kind of document and send it to Lene so we have some paper to help us guide us through this process because it's big. There's a lot to consider, and priorities are going to matter a lot, especially as we meet remotely. Thank you.
And Dave, would you like to talk about what you submitted? Your interesting.
I will. I will preface it. I went through Lene's review, which was very well done. I agree with John, and I just kind of put down some ideas, and as I re-reviewed them, I know some of them actually are a little off the mark as far as what maybe where they're at or located or what we could possibly do, but just to speak in more generalities. I think a big priority for us is safety along the Blue Star Highway. And that goes back to Denise's point. I mean, even by the Big B, I know the intersection at 135th, 66th and Blue Star. And we've spoken in the past in areas like along Old Allegan Road and Blue Star Highway, where the kids going to school in the morning, they're all shooting across that road. And Blue Star Highway, as we all know, is 50 miles an hour, and it people a lot of times go faster. And I've seen a lot of accidents up and down that road over the years, and I feel like it's something that we should consider discussing with the county and trying to come up with different ways for traffic safety along the Blue Star. That was one of mine. I did put something down here, and I actually had a conversation with Lene and Griffin about some access maybe to the state park, where the Padnos property is. But I think I was a little misinformed as to what was really talked about at that last meeting, or the meeting that I was referring to anyways. But anyways, just in more of a generality, I think it would be fantastic if we had an access from the township to the state park in order to be able to access that area there. I have gone through the state park that way, and it's beautiful.
I'm confused, Dave, where that access would be. Can you?
Well, there's really only, I mean, the state park is, there's the dune rides, and then there's the Padnos property, and then to the north of the Padnos property is where the state park. It's actually in Laketown Township.
I see what you're saying. I'm looking at it on a map now. That makes more sense. Sorry.
So, and having said that, I did notice on the master plan that area, kind of where I had envisioned some kind of an access is colored as a residential district, but if I understand right, that's supposed to actually be preserved. And I don't know if we have anything that's more of a conservation district or maybe open space, but anyways, I thought maybe that something would tie in, and that's something to think about. I was looking at the master plan, and I noticed the area that's white here. It's actually defined as right of way, which I don't know anything about this land other than where it is. But when I look at it as right of way, I infer that it is owned by the state, and maybe there's something that we can do with that. But I really have no idea. And I was thinking along those lines, if it was owned by the state, then maybe there's something you can do as far as kind of a cooperative where the township gets involved and really pushes down the cost of the land in order to be able to do the affordable housing, approach by driving property costs down. But that's just something that jumped out at me. Another thing, and I know John, I think you may even be on a committee for recycling. It seems like we talked about this months ago.
No, but Daniel is one of the township representatives. There's an ad hoc tri-community recycling committee.
Okay.
And Daniel was appointed to that when the board first addressed this. So.
Okay, so maybe this might be important to Daniel then as well. But I had looked at it as something that maybe there's a way you can do a tri-community, or I was thinking tri-community, but a recycling center to better handle our recycling. Just because I've heard, and I have nothing to back this. I don't know if this is true or not, and I'm not suggesting it is, but I've heard that that a lot of times the recycling isn't managed properly by the large garbage companies, and so maybe there's a better way we can handle that. And I do believe that recycling is important to a lot of people in this community. So just something I was thinking about, and I already talked about the affordable housing thing. And so those were some of the ideas that I had. Maybe some are too specific. Maybe they need to be a little more general for the master plan. But those were some of the ideas that I just kind of spitballed and threw to Lene and Griffin when I got Renee's review of the master plan. So that's all the more I had to say about that.
Dave, did you want me to say anything with respect to the possible recycling site?
I'd be interested to hear about it.
Yeah, it's something that's definitely come up in conversation. Apparently, Saugatuck City had one years ago. And I mean, it costs money to keep it open. Their problem was more with monitoring. So they had a lot of people dumping things that can't be recycled, and then they would have all these kind of hazardous materials on their hands. And they eventually closed it down. But it is something that other townships do, and apparently they must be able to do it successfully. So I don't think that there's anything to say that's not possible. There is a lot of back and forth and tension surrounding Republic. I think part of it was kind of just kind of a bumpy start to everything, because they were transitioning out of a way of recycling that Chef had been conducting and moving into a new process. And I don't think they really communicated it well to their customers. And that created a lot of tension and discord. Saugatuck City and Douglas City transitioned to that new system, which was bumpy. So there was a lot of kind of just personal tension between Republic and members of the community. But in terms of recycling, I know that they do recycle, that Holland had administered a whole like survey of how they do things, and actually went down to the processing facility and followed it all the way through. So they do recycle, and they're actually the providers that the county works through. But there is an option, which I'm kind of looking into now. The county does have a recycling program that we used to be a part of, that would that could get recycling services to us at a reduced cost, and there's some perks that go along with that. You get the services of the recycling program coordinator. So this person, her name's Rosemary Graham. She would help facilitate just kind of general just your general recycling program. She could facilitate the pickup of household hazardous waste. She can point you towards grant opportunities. So that's something that we're thinking about in terms of recycling, because right now we just don't have there's just no township endorsed recycling program. It's all kind of individuals and condominiums privately contracting with Republic or other waste hauler companies.
If you ever need to have more information on that, I can put you in touch with a friend of mine. He's the spokesman for the program, very involved with the state of Michigan and their recycling program, and educating people on how to properly recycle.
Yeah, that's something that we're actually working on.
So I can pass on his name and number, and I'm sure he'd love to speak with you.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Yeah, no, that's something that we're thinking about, because we're thinking about, really this is a township issue, not a city issue, because Douglas and Saugatuck cities have these recycling carts that Holland actually kind of followed through with Republic, and they found that actually it's like somewhere between, depending on whether or not people properly clean items out and whether or not they put the proper items into the recycling cart, it's somewhere between like 85 and over 90% of materials that are going into these new recycling carts are materials that are successfully recycled. Yellow bags are no longer in use at all. They're treated just like garbage. So the cities have a huge leg up on us in terms of everybody has access to these carts. But if you live in the township, you can get access, but you have to pay as an individual. And if you don't pay right now, you technically have zero recycling services.
Right, and Daniel, to that point, I just want to remind everyone, because so many are new to the community and new to this board. I think it was 5 years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, but the township voters resoundingly voted to leave the county program. It doesn't mean everyone wanted to leave, but that's how our residents voted, and that's when we left. We used to get an assessment, and you could get recycles picked up by the county. Now, that's probably one of the most frequent phone calls we get in the office. A lot of people, a lot of new people have moved here in the last 2 years. And right now the number of affidavits coming in, property ownership changing to people, from out of state, other areas, probably at a record high. And so many of them ask about that. So I'm just throwing that out there. And it's possible that the mood is changing, but in the past boards resoundingly were against single hauler. I think the last time it was voted on, one member voted yes and the rest did not. It was very contentious, and that's where we're at. But it is a matter for the people, and we might want to relook at some of those things and take a different temperature check.
Yeah, and I
I think you have your hand up too. What would you like to add something? Mr. Rowe, Bill?
Just a little bit of a discussion on housing. I think we have to open ourselves up to some other possibilities if we want truly affordable housing. I think we need to look at where we allow multifamily. whether it be duplex or fourplex or even apartment buildings. I think we need to think in terms of manufactured housing, whether it be a manufactured housing community, which could go anywhere from what is traditionally called a mobile home park, to a true platted subdivision that is full of manufactured homes, double wides, things of that nature, which you see a lot in Florida. Construction costs are going through the roof. I mean, absolutely through the roof. And to think, even if you think in terms of a tiny house, which I was very surprised to hear Ryan Kilpatrick say is not really that viable as far as affordable housing when he spoke to us last year, because I was a big advocate, and I still am. I still think that we need to look at that and look at minimum sizes and anything we can do to make it easier for people to own a home. But I was a little surprised when he said that just really doesn't solve the problem. It's not an important piece. But with construction costs gone so crazy, I think we need to look at apartments, and I think we need to look at some type of, or maybe a couple of different kinds of manufactured communities, whether they be, like I say, more along the lines of a traditional mobile home park. I don't like that idea as much because people don't own the land. They basically own a depreciating asset as opposed to an appreciating asset. And I think our goal should be to help increase people's equity and personal wealth and so on in owning a property. But some folks just simply can't afford to do that. And so a mobile home park is a viable alternative. So those have always been discouraged, I think, largely in not only in our township, but I think many places, because I think they've got a pretty bad rap, and poorly run parks live up to that bad rap, but it doesn't have to be a poorly run park. I think we can put some restrictions in and so on that would, help promote, good quality parks. So those are just some of the thoughts. One other thing kind of relates to housing, but the other thing that I'm always amazed at is we live in a resort community and we don't have a campground.
Yeah.
There's no campground in Saugatuck Township, and there has been an explosion of RV sales since COVID because it's the ultimate safe space. And, RV dealers that used to sell 10 units a day are selling 100 units a day. People are running out and buying these things as alternative housing, as safe spaces, as a place to spend the summer, what have you. The demand for recreational vehicle parks, RV parks, is just gone ballistic. And we currently allowed as an SAU in Ag 1, Ag 2, and C1. Maybe we need to look at expanding that, or maybe we need to look at making it a by right in those zones. Because frankly, you need large tracts of land, to do something like that. So, I think maybe we need to open ourselves up to that too, because it brings a lot of revenue into the community, granted in the summer months mostly, but it can even provide seasonal housing. People can live and work in a mobile home in Florida in the winter, and live and work in a mobile home or an RV in Saugatuck during the summer, and move back and forth, things of that nature. So I just think we have to take a real big picture view, because construction costs are just getting to be astronomical. And if we're talking about truly affordable, it's going to be some type of alternative, like some type of manufactured home. So those are my thoughts.
I can say that in Holland, they have a couple new manufactured home developments. One is out on 32nd Street, out towards the golf course there, West Shore, I believe is the golf course or something like that. And I heard it's very, very nice. I've been thinking about riding out there to look at that, and I'm not sure where the other one is. So that started in Florida is moving into this area. And I heard that it's not just for affordable housing necessarily, but people with multiple dwellings here and south or in Arizona are choosing also to live in those kind of units because they're easier to maintain.
Right.
Denise, I see that you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just agree. I agree with what you're saying. I think we're pricing ourselves out, frankly. And when you see the restaurants and the places in town don't have enough people to work it, nobody wants to work it because we don't have that community of workers. We just have large homes and wealthy people that are building bigger homes, sprawling homes. I also want to just put in a thought about accessory dwellings. I know that it's, again, a kind of a hot topic where we don't necessarily, we kind of have a stigma against accessory dwellings. It is happening, whether we want to know it's happening or not. It is happening. People are living in trailers behind their homes and bringing in their in-laws and living in accessory dwellings. The thought about permitting accessory dwellings might just be something we would want to consider, because then there's some, what am I saying, some kind of accountability. It can be, we can put a watch over it. We can put some kind of, just so that there's a permit for it. And then there are some rules that they would need to live by versus what is already happening that we just kind of close our eyes to. So just a thought on that. And I just also want to agree with maybe some other kind of mobile homes, campgrounds, something. I just feel like Saugatuck is now pricing itself out. And especially given the school bond, we debating on what, whose statistics you look at, the school population is a little bit shrinking. And I'm afraid it's just going to keep shrinking. Making the school bond a moot point if we have no children and no affordable family homes. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Just
Well,
a,
it's very important for us to have these thoughts and then relay them to the board, but our collaboration with the board is really important, and the vision is something that all areas, many people in our township will be part of, but the township board are ultimately the decision makers in this. So it's just important to know that and understand that. Dave, would you like to say something?
I was just going to say, just a quick point is kind of to Bill's point, that actually a local successful RV park is Saugatuck RV Park. I think it's very nice, and granted it's on the water, and it's, you know, it's a little less affordable, but I think it seems like it's well managed. It's very popular. It seems like people are, you know, really take care of their you know, their modular homes or their mobile homes. And I don't know, I think it's a good, successful local example.
And I agree with you on that, Dave, but that is an ownership park. There's no transient RVs. So you have to own your site, and you stay there, but somebody coming from, traveling around the country in an RV or whatever cannot go into that.
Right. Well, that's, yeah.
So.
And it's also seasonal.
And
It is very, well, any RV park is going to be seasonal in
It's
Michigan.
very well run, and they're very popular, and there's lots of sales going on there all the time.
Right.
But again, it's
Actually,
a summer only.
I just occurred to me, it is actually a campground. I just was walking through there and spoke to them, and they had an argument with the governor because they were listed as a campground and they were supposed to get shut down. So that went back and forth. And so technically we do have a campground, but I don't think it runs as.
It does not.
No, it's not open to anyone.
No, exactly. And still, the prices even there, the prices there aren't really, who's to say what's affordable? What's affordable to one is not, how do we put a price on affordable? What price?
I think Daniel has his hand raised too.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess 2 points kind of in the same area, just to support Denise's comment about accessory dwelling units. I think that's a great idea to explore, but also in thinking about attainable housing, I've been thinking about who in the community needs housing. I work in the service industry. There's a lot of people in the service industry that have to travel a long way to work here, and they're not necessarily looking to purchase, they're looking to rent. And I'm also thinking my neighbor 2 doors down, she moved into a rental property on a larger tract of land. And she was kind of getting out of her house because she was in the middle of a divorce. And I think that there are people who live in our community that for various reasons need to get out of their housing situation and need a place to stay, and need a place to stay that is not seasonal, that is, that's long-term. So it's also people who are already in the community that for whatever reason, they need a place to stay. They have to get out of their housing situation. And I just there's not that many options for them. And I think that makes, it even more challenging, whatever situation they're in. So I'm thinking about attainable housing, not just for the long run about getting people to purchase, but, there's probably an immediate need somebody has to either they have kids and they want to stay in the district, and that's something that's important to them, or something happened where they can no longer live with their living. So to be able to create more rental properties that can be serviced for long-term rental, I think is something that we should be thinking about.
Okay, thank you.
One of the, just along those lines, we have been seeing in the industry the demand for accessory commercial units too. I suggested this Strong Towns, which is this movement that started out of Minneapolis, and there's a podcast and a website, but they've been producing some articles recently about the idea of ACUs. And when you drive through older commercial districts like streetcar suburbs and stuff, you'll see your traditional mixed use building blocks like you see in downtown Saugatuck. I mean, you even have this in downtown Saugatuck where houses have been turned into commercial units, or the house might have been set back and then they build a storefront in front at the edge of in the back of the sidewalk. And those are those accessory commercial units. So, people working from home more, the affordability perspective certainly, but also how you can creatively infill these business districts a little bit is compelling with these ACUs.
Well, thank you, everyone. I think that the important piece tonight too is that you get your thoughts maybe collected and submit them so we can have something to talk to the board about when we do. I had a few things too that I would add to that, and I would just really like to emphasize, as Dave talked about the Blue Star Highway corridor, we did have a lot of discussion previously about those intersections and the safety of it, and I think we really need to have that on our list. And we actually had a lot of discussion and research into roundabouts, and I wouldn't mind having that conversation again. And you might not agree with it, but they're just expanding exponentially around the United States. And a couple other things I thought were kind of interesting to maybe talk about were possibly partnership townships. And a lot of people have sister cities and things like that, but is there any partnership townships out there where we could collaborate or just meet annually for a couple days with other townships and see what they're doing and what we're not doing or what we are doing, and just share that with them? And I thought that would be kind of interesting. And then in some of the reading I did for this too, the question always asked is, what is our community character and who do we want to be and what do we want to look like? And I think that's really important when we start a long-term vision conference like this, to say, why do people choose to live here and what will keep people here versus having them leave? So assessing our community and just describing our character, I think, is really important. Also, I really strongly believe in assessing it for walkability, and there are probably some areas where we could look at still for sidewalks and maybe make a recommendation to our board in those areas. Another thing that we really haven't talked about, but I feel is extremely important, two things actually, is assessing our community for senior health needs or senior needs. And it's for older people living here and the services they would need and accessibility to those services, access, and develop a plan or at least support what we have for seniors, I think would be very important. And possibly we would need to sometime do a needs assessment for our township and see if there are some actual needs within the township that aren't being met for people when we talk about possibly affordability, but maybe there's meals or other services that people might need, housekeeping, things like that actually are run by Allegan County and Evergreen Commons for folks in Allegan County, which includes our tri-community, and they're covered in the millage. And so we want to make sure that we're making full use of that senior millage. And then I'm not sure, when I read our community plan, our master plan, I would love to take more credit in our community for recreation and define that even and promote it more as to what we do offer, because I look at things like apple orchards, boating, golf, dune rides, art venues, library, the SCA venues, dining, public parks, playgrounds, dog parks, all of those things are part of recreation. And I just think we should take credit for what we do. And then I would love to see a map with bike trails, paths, and all parks and playgrounds on it someday. And maybe we have that, I don't know. And then I had 16 things, but the last thing I'll mention is just exploring grants to support housing projects and health services. And I know that we have AMR, but I do have concerns yet in certain areas about how long it takes for someone to have emergency services if they should be in heart failure or have a heart attack. And then from that point of getting them to a hospital in Zeeland or Holland or possibly South Haven. And it would be really at least interesting to see if we could explore a partnership with Holland Community Hospital or Spectrum at some point to have a non-emergent care facility here, especially because we have so many summer visitors. And I think that that's something that might be helpful in the future. And we would encourage them, of course, to build it. But then other things I agree upon were the sign ordinance and community collaboration, I think is really important in all the projects we have. And that's why I so welcome us getting back to meetings where we can have the community present. So, and one other just little idea, if you're envisioning things here, I love food trucks. And over the years, I've noticed these food trucks in Traverse City kind of emerge and eventually they become a restaurant. But they do have this very small area designated for their food trucks. And there's all kinds of people waiting in line to go to these 4 different food trucks that are in a tiny little space downtown. So it's kind of fun. And I think there's been maybe some issues that we haven't wanted food trucks here, but I wouldn't mind exploring them again. So that's my last word. So any other thoughts on this subject? Well, I would suggest, does this sound okay, Lene, that we sort of go through this now again one more time and then just compile our thoughts and get them to you? I lost your voice.
Sorry. Yes, I think a working list would be great. And just know that I'm not a full time at the township, so things take a little bit longer. you know, we'll address things as we can and as best we can. There might be, you know, some of this, I see a lot of alignment with a lot of this. So I think that some of these bigger topics we could probably address, you know, in a holistic way, like housing attainability, and even, you know, walkability, ADUs, those are all very related. The idea of commercial, like supporting the business community. So that includes things like food trucks. Housing relates, I think, back to chickens too, but yeah. I feel like we could kind of group some of these together.
Sure, I think we could too. And would it be your preference that things that are on this list and recommendations from planning somehow relate also to zoning?
Yeah, right. You know, I think things like recycling, really great update and great conversation, but some of what's in the master plan, right, are the zoning ordinance isn't the implementation tool. So for this body and in terms of the skill set that I have and our time together, we should focus on the zoning related items.
Sure.
And I think we just also have to be mindful with all of these conversations that we're balancing competing interests, right? We have, you know, private property rights and those interests with, you know, the idea for strict standards and requirements, right? So there's always going to be a bit of a tension, and we walk a fine line. And that's why all of your expertise is so important, because you're able to kind of help turn that dial and say, you know, we're going way off, you know, way too far this way. Let's bring it back a little bit. And we have to remember that whatever we adopt to can be changed. You know, of course it's an ordinance, but we can't think of these things as like cast in stone or in amber, right? We're gonna have to see how things work after we make changes and know that we might tweak them. I mean, there's no perfect zoning ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comments before we move on to this?
One quick thing.
Yes.
So I live in one of the areas zoned A1, where I think the minimum lot size is 2.5 acres. I just have from reading the master plan, I have some reservations about the idea of moving forward with reducing lot sizes. Because I mean, I like the rural feel of this area. There are some larger tracts of land. And I'm just thinking, like, this is probably just way too far in advance thinking at this point, but I just kind of wanted to put that out there, that perhaps like when we're thinking about attainable housing, we should start to think too about specific areas of the township that are best suited for it, as opposed to kind of changing it whole scale and kind of allowing it to be anywhere.
I think that's exactly what we're talking about.
Okay, cool. I kind of got that sense, but I just wanted to put it out there.
Yes, I don't think we're talking about just opening it up, Daniel.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I don't see that we're going to be making changes to the master plan. It's more tweaking our zoning ordinance where we can, and being really mindful of those long-term, you know, those implications. And also just be mindful that we have a big list of things, and that, you know, we do have limited resources, and we're going to do the best that we can to get through as many of these as we can, but it's going to be a journey. It's going to take us some time. And this is just one list of items. We have, you know, we want to have that joint meeting, and there's probably things that the other communities might bring to the table that we want to look at.
That's true. Okay, thank you, Lynette. Jen, I love your idea about chickens, but I just want to quickly tell you that in Holland, when they approved chickens in the neighborhoods around town, chickens came with roosters, and those roosters were really loud, and the neighbors complained.
Yeah, but you can say no roosters. I said that. Some of the ordinances are hens only.
Okay.
I actually,
I wanted to tell you that one. It was
And
interesting.
you can look at the Douglas ordinance. It's
Okay. Good. Okay. Any more discussion?
I actually know the person, Ronna Alexander, who passed presented the pilot program for chickens in Douglas. And if we did want to hear from her, I'm sure she'd be happy to give us her presentation, because she actually goes through like the whole process of how chickens come to lay eggs and the health aspects of it. But she's a great resource. So if we were interested in exploring those issues, I'm sure Ronna would be happy to talk with us and present to us what she presented to Douglas. And that's been going on, I think, for over a year now.
Okay.
cool.
I think it'd be a good idea.
Okay. Lene, one last question for you. The book, Strong Towns, is that available for us to check out of the township office by chance? Do you have a couple copies?
I have a copy. You can check it out.
I ordered it on Amazon, and I mean, it was relatively inexpensive. It showed up in 2 days, and so I have a copy that I've been reading as well.
Okay.
That's where it's like I said, it's available on Amazon.
Okay. Well, if somebody does not want to order it from Amazon, there is a copy in the office they could check out for a week or something, correct?
Yeah, you can borrow mine. That's not a problem. I'll put it in my bag tonight.
And one other book I would recommend, I don't know if you can see this, but can you see this? It's called Our Towns.
Mm-hmm.
And it's by Jim and Deborah Fallows. And they were actually here last year and spoke in Holland in January. And they did a 100,000 mile journey across America to just see what was in the heart of, they picked a small town out of every state and went in and just kind of documented how the town changed with time and how they had to change. But it's very good too. So I just thought it's an interesting read if you want to read another book, or you can borrow mine. Okay, so I think we're ready to move on to old business. I don't think there is any old business, is there? No follow-ups from
No old business, no.
Okay, perfect. Any more? So now we're on to public comment.
Yes.
Previous guidelines apply. Is there any public comment?
We have Lori Goshorn's joining us. And also to note that Bill Rowe, his computer died, so he has left the Zoom.
I'm back.
Oh,
good.
hi, Bill. Bill's back. Lori, I guess, for any final public comments?
Yes, I just would like to thank you guys for doing such a good job in discussing this topic. I think it's extremely important moving forward to the character of the community. I mentioned at the board meeting where there was the discussion of the recycling that we might consider as a potential business opportunity in an area maybe over near the dog park or somewhere where we do have some property, do some kind of a commercial composting facility, because we have so many business in the area, restaurants and resorts and things that use compostable containers for takeout, which are not compostable in our home compost systems. And that could be a really good business opportunity, which also could be possibly abutted up with a recycling taken station, which would then be manned by somebody potentially. Just a thought. And also, Becky, thank you for bringing up roundabouts, and also Dave for bringing up the intersection at Blue Star 135th and 65th Street. I frequently have to turn left out of that intersection, and it's a feat of sometimes kind of scary during season. And a lot of the discussion in the past revolved around the cost of traffic lights and traffic studies and so forth. And I had found materials on how many accidents and things had happened at that intersection probably 3 years ago. And it was at that point that a friend of mine said that would be an ideal place for a roundabout, much like they have at exit 22, which is the northernmost exit from to South Haven. And once people get the hang of it, it's really quite effective at keeping traffic moving, but also allowing people to merge in and merge out. It is moving. The MDOT really likes them because they are low cost and very effective. And I would encourage you to consider that as potential for a lot of these more difficult to cross areas. And just to continue the conversations that you're having. This community is well worth it. And keeping the feel and culture and everything of it is important, as well as being inviting. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lori. Is there any other public comments?
There is none.
Welcome. Then moving on to board discussion. John, Township Board update, please.
Yes, since the Planning Commission last met, the Township Board has conducted 2 remote meetings via Zoom on July 8th and August 12th. At the July 8th meeting, there was public comment primarily on Riverside Drive resurfacing plans, comments about drainage issues at the new Boscraft warehouse development, and the Supreme Court pending case regarding the Saugatuck Dunes Coastal Alliance. The board went on to vote to appoint, as we all know, and are very pleased, Daniel DeFranco and Denise Shipley to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission Chair Preetz did not apply for reappointment. On the Zoning Board of Appeals side, the board appointed Michael O'Brien as a commissioner and reappointed both Richard Brady and Patrick Stewart as alternates. We passed a wellhead protection ordinance. We discussed it. Staff was advised to do further research and work with zoning administrator Wells on a potential ordinance for the township. And both the treasurer and manager, that's myself and Mr. Graham, we both reported on the strong fiscal position the township found itself in at the close of our fiscal year, which was July 31st. In August, the meeting began with presentations from the Tri-Community Recycling Committee, which we discussed earlier with Mr. DeFranco and others. They focused on their plans to conduct a public survey starting in early September. There was a second presentation from a Gun Lake tribe historian and board member of the Saugatuck Douglas History Center, suggesting the township form a commission to consider establishing a historical district along parts of the lakeshore and Kalamazoo River mouth. Public comment was then heard, and it was primarily on further on the Riverside Road resurfacing and widening plans. I then reported, just as I thought a good postmark, whatever. I reported that summer tax payments, which began on July 1st, were running 21% higher in the receipt rate than they were last year, which I think was a bit of a surprise considering the broader economic situation in the country. Our clerk, Abby Bigford, and I then gave an update. She and I had both been entrusted by the full board to work together to further study, analyze, and look at the financial investment strategy of the township. Just as a little comparison, township right now has 1 certificate of deposit at 1 bank. That's our total investments. City of Saugatuck, for example, has 13 different CDs at different banks and other products that they use. So we've been interviewing people and studying this because we think we're way underinvested in terms of the amount of money we have in the bank and the cash that's not earmarked for other expenditures. We're hoping to present some initial steps and suggestions to the full board at our September meeting. Cemetery services agreement with the city of Saugatuck was approved at long last. That had hung out there for about 20 months. Douglas had signed their renewal right away back in the beginning of 2019, but it took longer to reach an agreement with the city. We also heard from Manager Graham, who did an exhaustive summary of all the different contracts for professional and other services to the township, some with contracts, some without. And this is something that we don't think had ever been done before. And it focused on everything from our legal counsel, our auditor, and other more mundane things like lawn care services. But we now have a better picture of who all these people are that are working for us and that we're entrusting to service. So there'll be more on that later in the future. And in closing, the board offered condolences to our fellow trustee, Stacy Aldrich, on the loss of her husband, Keith, last month, and also recognition of our loss of township resident, RJ Peterson. The next board meeting will be Wednesday, September 9th, 6 p.m., again on Zoom, and you're all welcome to participate if you're so minded. Thank you. Any questions?
Just one quick update. We have been, I haven't been working as hard as Nick Curcio, but our township attorney has come up with a draft ordinance, wellhead protection ordinance, that I'm going to be reviewing. And I'm also working with him and hopefully Allegan County on a map that goes along with that, or that wellhead protection overlay. Essentially, it'll be an amendment to our zoning ordinance and zoning map. So that draft will come before the Planning Commission to review, because any change to any of our zoning maps or our ordinance language first starts with the Planning Commission. You make a recommendation after a public hearing, and then it goes to the Township Board. So that is a work in progress. Just wanted you to know.
Cool.
And my condolences, I did not realize RJ Peterson passed away.
Yep.
Any other questions for John or Lene? Can we entertain any other discussion from Planning Commission board members that they would like to say this evening?
John, quick question. What was the result about consideration for the historic district, or assembling a committee to think about establishing an historic district? Was there any movement on that?
No, good question. Similar to your presentation from the recycling committee, those were presentations, so they're not by the rules, they're not for discussion and questioning by the board. The next step would be if someone in the public or a board member chose to make it an agenda item for further consideration. So that's the status of that.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, it is now 8:40. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I would move that we adjourn.
I'll
And that
second that.
was supported by Eileen, moved by Rowe?
Yes.
Moved by Rowe and supported by Eileen. Roll call vote, please. Eileen?
Aye.
Rowe?
Yes.
Israel's yes. Helmrich?
Yes.
DeFranco?
Yes.
Welk?
Yes.
Shipley?
Yes.
Okay. Anonymous. Good evening, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Bye.
Thank you.